Ladies and gentlemen, hello, and thank you very much for joining our webinar. This is the third in a series of webinars that are provided by Oximio, Ukraine, in light of the current situation and in order to update you, general audience, and our clients. To begin with, just a few guidelines to hold the webinar in an efficient manner. Firstly, your camera and microphone are automatically muted. Please use the chat function to communicate with the host. Questions can be submitted via the questions section, and this webinar is being recorded and a link will be sent to you afterwards, so you can watch it on demand as well. Our speakers today will include a select colleagues from our company, headed by Olga Vizgalova, our Managing Director at Oximio Ukraine, Evgeny Volinets, our Head of Commercial Legal at Oximio, Dmitry Zavada, a Senior Key Account Manager in our Ukrainian facility, Oksana Pidmogilina, a business development expert for strategic services and patient-centric services in Oximio, Ukraine. And we are also privileged to hold Mrs. Ludmila Yarko, a representative from the Ukrainian MOH. She's the head of the expert group on quality and availability of medicines Pharmaceutical Directorate of the Ukrainian MOH. Our agenda today is going to be very diverse, and it will include the Ukrainian clinical trial market, a very short overview of the current situation in light of the challenges, some of the MOH activities that are supporting the Ukrainian clinical trial market. We are also going to present to you our Oximio business continuity plan in light of the crisis. We're going to provide a very professional, succinct overview of the regulatory updates in Ukraine, concentrating on expanded access program and the new regulations governing it in Ukraine. We are going to discuss our new solutions, enabling sites and investigators to focus on patients, especially in light of the current situation. At the end, time permitting, we're also going to allow some time for questions and answers. And again, thank you very much for joining. Delving right into the webinar and our content, we're going to start, as I said, with the Ukrainian clinical trial market overview. And Olga, I hand over the microphone to you.
Guys, thank you. Dear colleagues, first of all, let me take a chance and introduce myself. My name is Olga Vizgalova, and I'm acting as Director of Investments and Ukraine. My previous job experience and scope was directed to geographical expansion strategy, and now we are fully focusing on Ukraine, team and country management. Let me open the market section with the historical data on market growth during recent years. Since 2016, after the drop of the clinical market in UA due to Russian invasion in 2014, we have been observing a stable and gradual growth of the clinical trial markets. And this graph demonstrates the number of startups. We all know the events of February 2022 that impacted all the fields of the economical, social, political life of the country, including clinical trials. Guy, please, next slide. Some of the clinical trials were postponed. 23 of them were prematurely terminated. And recruiting of the patients within more than 200 clinical trials was stopped. However, there are approximately 750 clinical trials in Ukraine, and as per September 2022, 553 clinical trials have been started and around 200 have been approved by Ministry of Health but postponed. This indicates that despite of current situation, clinical trials go on and the activity is also in place. Guy, please, next slide. The recent events also affected our patients. As you know, patients is focus for all of us. Most of the patients' population stay in Ukraine and continued their treatment at the place of clinical trial. At the same time, around 400 people were relocated in Ukraine or outside of Ukraine. Among the countries who hosted Ukrainian patients are Poland, Germany, Czech Republic, other European countries. The farthest of them is Canada. But despite of these figures, we see that around 500% of all total Ukrainian patient population left Ukraine. All others stay in Ukraine and they require the continuation of their therapy. Guy, please, next slide. One more data about the patient population in Ukraine. According to the Ukrainian return report by International Organization for Migration, many people have already returned to Ukraine. Despite of huge numbers of outflows, we have around 6 million of people that return to the country every month. Let's go further, Guy. Lately, Ukrainian clinical trials show gradual signs of recovery. 10 clinical trials were started since March as patients came back in the places of trial. And within 8 clinical trials, the patient's enrollment has been resumed. Guy, please, next slide. Another positive trend is active communication and collaboration of sponsored with State Expert Center of Ministry of Health of Ukraine. The increased number of significant amendments indicate continuous control of the conduction of clinical trials life cycle and compliance with GCP requirements. Let's go ahead. So we have some recommendation for sponsor. First of all, it's risk assessment. The preparation of instruction and standard operation procedures on risk assessment should be in place in advance. They should be related to the clinical trials conduct, patient safety, that transportation and visit to schedule. It's necessary also to consider the updated ways of clinical trials delivery and distribution of IMP to sites as well as to the patients. Also, the optimization should be directed to the collection of biosamples and biomaterials. And here, the involvement of local laboratories can be a solution. And also, we should make the remote monitoring of primary clinical data. Guy, please, show the slide. Now, a few words about business continuity, how we and what we implement as a company. Guy? Oximio actively monitors the situation on the market and in the country, and we are fully prepared for various scenarios for escalation. Given forecasts from various sources regarding possible damage to power plants and lack of a central power supply, we plan an ongoing safety to your products at our facility in Kiev and Brody. So we have few areas of work. It's the availability of operational staff, it's the technical preparation and communication plan. With regards to the presence of operational staff, so we are 100% ready to process all your shipments, inbound and outbounds. Our people live 15 meters far from warehouse, and at the time of the even longest disruption, we have also a backup and opportunity to check once again all the shipments beside the working hours. Among the technical solutions that we implemented, our facilities, both our facilities, are equipped with high-power diesel generators that provides electricity to all rooms, to all temperatures regimes, refrigerators, and temperature monitoring system. We carry out constant testing and maintenance of generator according to standard procedure. The last test and service was made on the 28th of November, 2 days ago, with no issues reported. There is sufficient fuel available for uninterrupted smooth operations with the help of generator. And we have the ongoing provisions and contracts for fuel to support generator with the fuel on a constant basis. And communication plan. It's very important to stay connected. So from technical solution, we are equipped with the alternative internet providers, with Starlink, and also we have a people plan. You are equipped with, or you have your assigned project manager. We have a project manager assigned for outside from Ukraine, like a backup, and also you can always reach your key account manager. Guy, please, next slide. As a result of our preparation during all these months, so during all these challenges time, we managed to process more than 1,500 inbounds. We prepared and distributed more than 7,500 shipments. We did export of biosamples, and I think that it's a proof of our resistance and our capabilities to provide these services. And we believe that together with you, with our partners, with our clients, we are capable to prove that, first of all, we are resistant as a country, and our clinical trials market can be supported and can be served by our clinical trials community. Thank you very much. Guy, that's all from my side.
Yes, Olga, thank you very much. And I think the numbers speak for themselves. There is no way to downgrade the severity of the situation, of course. But over the last months, since the invasion, I think the Ukrainian market and the different service providers have shown incredible resilience. And the numbers support the fact that clinical trials are not only continuing, but most of the patients are there. And we also see gradual improvement in the figures. And I think as time goes by, this resilience is going to prove even more robust than initially contemplated. And side by side with the support of the service providers, of course, the tandem between the actual industry and the MOH is very important. And we're very privileged and we're very thankful that Ludmila Yarko from the Ukrainian MOH is joined today in order to share some of the supporting activities and the initiatives of the Ukrainian MOH. Please go ahead, Ludmila.
Вітаю всіх учасників сьогоднішнього вебінару. Перш за все хочу представитись. Мене звати Ярко Людмила і я представляю Міністерство охорони здоров'я України. Translate, please.
Let me support Ludmila with translation. Ludmila Yarko is the representative of Ministry of Health of Ukraine. Thank you, Ludmila.
Перш за все, хочу подякувати організаторам заходу за долучення Міністерства охорони здоров'я до нього та надану можливість повідомити спільноті про ті заходи, які вжиті та вживаються Міністерством охорони здоров'я задля максимального усунення бюрократичних моментів, так і покращення умов для суб'єктів господарювання, які дотичні до клінічних випробувань. Translate, please.
Greetings to all participants of today's webinar. First of all, I would like to thank Oximio for involving the Ministry of Health and for the opportunity to inform the community about the measures undertaken by the Ministry of Health to eliminate bureaucratic issues as much as possible, as well as to improve the conditions for business entities that involved in clinical trials.
Оскільки питання розвитку клінічних досліджень було і є важливим для України, а тим більше в тих умовах, у яких перебуває наша країна на сьогодні, зважаючи на те, що і надалі Росія цинічно та свідомо провокує гуманітарну та екологічну кризу в Україні. Тому, маючи таку нагоду, перш за все хочу висловити подяку таким компаніям, які вийшли з ринку Російської Федерації через те, що така підтримка для України – це найкращий спосіб проявити свою соціальну позицію у світі. Водночас хотіла би звернутися до присутніх та попросити вас всіх прокомунікувати з виробниками лікарських засобів, а також спонсорами та контрактно-дослідницькими організаціями, що дотичні до клінічних досліджень, які залишаються спонсорами війни до сьогодні із закликом приєднатися до міжнародних санкцій та припинити інвестувати в фармацевтичні дослідження та нові розробки у Росії, а також припинити клінічні дослідження інноваційних препаратів у Росії.
Development of clinical trials was and is important for Ukraine, and even more now. In the condition when Russia continues to provoke humanitarian and environmental crises. Therefore, having such an opportunity, first of all, I want to express my gratitude to such companies that have exited the Russian market, because such support for Ukraine is the best way to demonstrate social position in the world. At the same time, I would like to appeal to the audience and ask you all to communicate with the drug manufacturers, sponsor and CRO companies to join international sanctions and stop investing in pharmaceutical research in Russia, as well as stop clinical trials of innovative drugs in Russia. I would also like to know the importance of restoring Ukrainian market.
В свою чергу хотіла би зазначити також на важливості для нас питання відновлення України та розвитку системи охорони здоров'я в цілому, у тому числі залучення та розширення нових клінічних випробувань в Україну. Тому нам потрібна зараз концентрація зусиль не лише на фронті, а й у тилу. А зараз коротко хотіла би представити ті кроки та заходи, які вжито та вживаються Міністерством охорони здоров'я для розвитку клінічних досліджень в Україні.
I would also like to know the importance of Ukraine recovering and development the healthcare system as a whole, including necessity attracting and expanding new clinical trials into Ukraine. So we need now to concentrate efforts not only at the front line of the war, but also in all other areas. And now I would like to present the steps and measures undertaken by Ministry of Health for clinical trials. Please, Lyudmila.
Next slide, please. Для напрацювання невідкладних заходів із підтримки сфери клінічних досліджень фармацевтичним директоратом щоп'ятниці проводяться засідання. Створено так звану неформальну робочу групу з представниками Української асоціації клінічних досліджень, Європейської бізнес-асоціації та іншими стейкхолдерами у сфері проведення клінічних випробувань. На робочій групі були розглянуті проблемні питання та обговорено необхідність напрацювання консолідованих рішень, які потребують вирішення у короткостроковій, так і довгостроковій перспективі. Так, до короткострокових планів було віднесено наступні заходи. Translate, please.
To develop urgent measures for support of the field of clinical trials, the Pharmaceutical Directorate set up a regular meeting every Friday for informal working group with representatives of Ukrainian Association of Clinical Trials, the European Business Association, and other stakeholders in the field of clinical trials. The working group reviews problematic issues and required consolidated solutions that need to be addressed in the short and long term. Людмила, пожалуйста.
Сприяння забезпеченню пріоритетного митного оформлення для експорту біозразків та імпорту досліджуваних лікарських засобів та супутніх матеріалів в рамках проведення клінічних випробувань шляхом введення зеленого коридору для таких вантажів компаніям, які займаються відповідним видом діяльності. Міністерством охорони здоров'я України було підготовлено та направлено лист-звернення до Державної прикордонної служби України та Державної митної служби України із сприянням у перетині кордону для таких зразків для 16 компаній. Translate, please.
So the short-term plans included, first of all, it's assisting in ensuring priority custom clearance for the export of biosamples and imports of IMPs and related materials within the framework of clinical trials by introducing grid corridors for such goods to companies which were engaged in a relevant type of activities. The Ministry of Health has prepared and sent a letter and appeal to the State Border Guard Service of Ukraine and State Customs Service with assistance in crossing the border for such samples for 16 companies.
Внесення змін до порядку проведення клінічних випробувань лікарських засобів, що затверджений наказом Міністерства охорони здоров'я номером 690, якими пропонується скоротити терміни експертизи клінічних випробувань з 47 календарних днів на 30 календарних днів, а також запровадити екстрену процедуру експертизи матеріалів клінічних випробувань лікарських засобів для лікування неінфекційних та інфекційних захворювань, які визначені також напрямами розвитку сфери охорони здоров'я, що затверджені наказом Міністерства охорони здоров'я в установленому порядку, що здійснюється у строк не більше 20 календарних днів. Translate, please.
Also, the amendments to procedures for conducting clinical trials, medical products, and examination of clinical trials materials, and a model regulation on ethic commissions approved by the order of Ministry of Health, dated 23rd of September 2009, which proposes to reduce the time for examination of clinical trials from 47 calendar days by 30 calendar days. Also, the introduction of the emergency procedure for the examination of materials, that means documents of clinical trials, for non-communicable and infection disease determined by the priority directions of development of the healthcare sector, and the time for reviewing such materials should be reduced to 20 calendar days. Please, Людмила.
Ведуться роботи щодо започаткування прийняття заяв про проведення клінічного випробування лікарського засобу та суттєвих поправок у Центрі адміністративних послуг Міністерства охорони здоров'я у електронному вигляді та можливості отримання електронної форми рішення Міністерства охорони здоров'я – це витяги з наказу Міністерства охорони здоров'я. Translate, please.
Also, there is initiation of acceptance of application for clinical trials with the amendments. Now, it is suggested to be done in electronic form, and the possibility of obtaining an electronic form of the decision of the Ministry of Health also presupposed by this amendment. Thank you. Людмила, дальше.
Next slide. Next slide, please.
You can start, Людмила.
Як я вже сказала вище, на робочій групі були визначені як короткострокові, так і довгострокові плани. Тому перейдемо до довгострокових. До довгострокових планів було віднесено такі заходи. Удосконалення процедури проведення клінічних випробувань, що затверджено наказом Міністерства охорони здоров'я номером 690, відповідно до пропозицій, які були надані Європейською бізнес-асоціацією листом до Міністерства охорони здоров'я. Ці зміни стосуються як і деяких уточнюючих моментів порядку, так і приведення у відповідність до положень регламенту Європейського Союзу. Наприклад, надання повідомлень про побічні явища, реакції, що виникають під час клінічних випробувань лікарських засобів, а також інші уточнюючі та необхідні зміни. Після узгодження із всіма зацікавленими сторонами змін до наказу його буде направлено на погодження до центральних органів виконавчої влади. Translate, please.
As it was mentioned above, both short-term and long-term plans have been identified within the working group. So now we proceed with the long-term ones. The following measures were included as a long-term steps. Improvement, first of all, it's improvement of the procedure for conducting clinical trials of medicinal products by amending the procedure. The changes concern some clarifying points in the procedure, as well as bringing in line with the provisions of European regulation. For example, the provision of reports of adverse events during clinical trials of medicine. Please further, Людмила.
Розробка та внесення змін до статті 8 Закону України про лікарські засоби в частині врегулювання виду страхування у клінічних випробувань, впровадження новітніх технологій проведення клінічних випробувань в Україні, це застосування телемедицини, дистанційного моніторингу та перевірки даних та інші зміни, які потребують внесення до закону. Також дуже важливим питанням є запровадження цифровізації в сфері клінічних випробувань, оскільки ми розуміємо, що в подальшому суттєво може покращити умови проведення клінічних випробувань та підвищити привабливість України для залучення міжнародних клінічних випробувань, яким буде передбачена можливість під час проведення клінічних випробувань застосування електронної форми первинної медичної документації, зберігання матеріалів клінічних досліджень у архівах, у електронних інформаційних системах. Translate, please.
Also, another initiative is the development and amendment of Article 8 of the Law of Ukraine on medicinal products, in terms of regulating the type of insurance in clinical trials, introducing the latest technologies for conducting clinical trials in Ukraine. For example, telemedicine, remote monitoring, and data verification, and other changes. Also, very important question is introduction of digitalization in the field of clinical trials that enables to attract new clinical trials into the country. Also, it's very important to provide the possibility of using the electronic form of primary medical documentation during clinical trials, storing the data in archives in electronic informational systems. Дальше, Людмила, пожалуйста.
Декілька слів хотіла би також сказати про важливі законопроекти, які також покращать умови для проведення клінічних випробувань в Україні. Наразі вони зареєстровані у Верховній Раді України та сподіваємося на їх найближче прийняття. Це такі законопроекти, як зміни до Податкового кодексу щодо врегулювання питання надання пацієнтам лікарських засобів зі співчуття, яким пропонується звільнення від оподаткування податком на додану вартість операцій з ввезення на митну територію України та або операцій з постачання на митні території України незареєстрованих лікарських засобів для клінічних випробувань та програм надання лікарських засобів зі співчуття, що надаються безоплатно. Translate, please.
Also, a few words about the important bills to improve the conditions for conducting of clinical trials in Ukraine that are currently registered in the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine. For example, it's amendments to the tax code regarding the settlement of the issue of providing patients with compassionate medicine, which proposes exemption from value-added taxes on the import of unregistered medicinal products into the customs territory of Ukraine, and operations with the supply of unregistered medicinal products for clinical trials and programs for the provision of compassionate medicine provided free of charge. Another amendments to the Criminal Code of Ukraine and the Code of Ukraine of Administrative Offenses to improve liability for violation of the established procedures for preclinical study, clinical trials, and state registration of medicinal products. The Ministry of Health supports the adoption of the draft law since the abolition of criminal liability provided for Article 312 of the Criminal Code of Ukraine that promote the development of preclinical study and clinical trial of medicine in Ukraine. Thank you, Людмила. Please, Piotr.
В той же час Міністерством охорони здоров'я розроблено проект плану відновлення системи охорони здоров'я України від наслідків війни на 2022-2032 роки, який включає перелік заходів з післявоєнного відновлення та розвитку України, пропозиції щодо пріоритетних реформ та стратегічних.
Olga, in case we have some connection problems, maybe you can go ahead with the translation.
Let me probably support Людмила.
Післявоєнний період, до якого
Людмила, continue, please. Продолжайте, пожалуйста. Связь пропадала, мы вас потеряли. Сейчас все хорошо.
Добре, продовжую. Цей план є частиною глобального плану відбудови України в післявоєнний період, до якого включено ряд цілей, завдань та етапів плану відновлення за пріоритетом відновлення фармацевтичного сектора, покращення доступу та належне використання ліків, які спрямовані на вирішення зазначеної проблеми. Одним із завдань є розробка та прийняття закону України про клінічні дослідження. Translate, please.
At the same time, Ministry of Health has developed a draft of rebuilding of the healthcare system in Ukraine after the consequences of the war 2022-2023, which includes a list of measures for the post-war recovery and development of Ukraine. And also it includes the priority within proposals with regards to reforms and strategic initiative. This plan is a part of Ukrainian global reconstruction plan of post-war period, which includes a number of goals, objectives, and strategies of recovery plan in Ukraine. And also one of the tasks is the development and adoption of the draft law of Ukraine on clinical trials. Людмила, пожалуйста.
Next slide, please. Користуючись нагодою, хочу поінформувати вас також, що 18 жовтня 2022 року в Міністерстві юстиції України зареєстровано наказ МОЗ про затвердження порядку, затвердження та проведення програми розширеного доступу пацієнтів до незареєстрованих лікарських засобів та програми доступу суб'єктів дослідження пацієнтів до досліджуваного лікарського засобу після завершення клінічного випробування. І цей наказ набрав чинності 1 листопада 2022 року. Translate, please.
Taking this opportunity, I would like to inform you that on the 18th of October 2022, the Ministry of Justice of Ukraine registered the order of the Ministry of Health of Ukraine on approval of the procedure for approval and implementation of the program of extended access of patients to unregistered medicinal products and the program of access of research subjects, it means to patients, with the purpose of investigated medical products of the completion of the clinical trials and amendments to the procedure for importing unregistered medicinal products in the territory of Ukraine, standard samples, reagents. The order entered into the force on the 1st November 2022. Людмила?
Усі програми розпочинаються після прийняття Міністерством охорони здоров'я рішення про затвердження програм та рішення про погодження таких програм Комісією з питань етики. В свою чергу хочу наголосити на тому, що Міністерство охорони здоров'я може прийняти позитивне рішення про затвердження програм лише за наявності сукупності усіх наявних підстав, що передбачені частиною 5 та 6 статті 8.1 Закону України про лікарські засоби. Translate, please.
All programs begin after the Ministry of Health decides to approve the programs and the decision to approve such programs by the Ethics Commission. I want to emphasize that the Ministry of Health can make a positive decision on the approval of the programs only under the availability of grounds provided in the Part 5 and 6 of Article 8 of the Law of Ukraine on Medicines. Людмила?
Далі хочу передати слово представникам Oximio, компанії-ініціатора програми розширеного доступу в Україні, які детальніше розкажуть, як вона працює на локальному рівні для вимоги учасників. Всім дякую за увагу та бажаю всім нам перемоги, миру та життя у вільній та щасливій Україні.
I would like to further convey the floor and to give a word to the representatives of Oximio who initiated the extended access program in Ukraine, and they will tell you more about how it works on a local level and all the requirements for participants. Thank you very much for your attention, and we wish you all of us victory, peace, and happy life in Ukraine. Thank you very much.
Yes, Ludmila, I would like to also add my thanks for your taking the time to join us and share all the activities that are going on from the point of view of the regulatory bodies. And I think it also attests to the fact that in addition to being adaptive in order to make changes during the time of the war, there are already considerations and thoughts about the future, which are manifested in your second slide. And also specifically talking about expanded access, thank you for handing over the baton to us. This is time to ask two of my colleagues, Evgeny and Oksana, to join us and delve a little bit more into the expanded access and how it manifests itself from the point of view of the service provider. Please.
Thank you, Gal. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to present myself. My name is Evgeny Volonets, and I am a head of commercial legal department in Oximio. And today I will provide an information about expanded access programs in Ukraine. By the way, our company, as was mentioned before, was one of the initiators of implementation such programs in Ukraine. And during this year, as a member of European Business Association, we had extremely hard work together with Ministry of Health to implement this novelty in Ukrainian legislation. As a result, we have changes in law on medicine and new Order 1525 issued by Ministry of Health that provide procedure for conducting such programs. And of course, we can say that such mechanism is huge achievement and benefit not only for Ukrainian patients, but also for all pharmaceutical market in general. According to the new regulation, there are two types of expanded access programs. The first type is a program of expanded access of patient to unregistered medicinal product. So this is a program that provides free access to an unregistered medicinal product that is approved for use according to the relevant indications, or for which at least second phase of clinical trials has been initiated in the USA, countries of European Economic Area, Australia, Canada, Japan, Great Britain, Israel, or Swiss Confederation, and there is sufficient information on safety and efficiently, and this information sufficient to assess the ratio of benefit versus risk. And the second one is a program for access of clinical trials patients to the investigational medical products after the completion of such clinical trial. For implementation, we need to have 5 criteria. The first one, patient have a disease or serious medical condition. The second, patient do not have access to alternative effective methods of treatment, or this alternative method cannot work effectively. So the third one, there are sufficient data to assess the ratio of risk and expected positive effect. At least second phase of clinical trials has been started in the countries that I mentioned before, and there is a general description of patients who can participate in this program. Gal, please go to the next slide. Okay, as a result, we can summarize, according to the new regulation and amendment to the law on medicine, we have 2 types of expanded access program. The first type, the program of expanded access of patient to unregistered medicinal product, and the second one for clinical trials patients to IMP after the completion of such clinical trial. But in addition, I want to point out that the name patient mechanism that business used previously will remain valid and enforced. So company can implement this mechanism in case of need. Dear Gal, please next slide. I would like also to touch principles, requirements, and necessary conditions of those programs and provide few of them in this webinar. So programs must be conducted in accordance with international ethical principles, ensuring the protection of rights, safety, and well-being of patients. Programs can be carried out only if the expected benefit justifies the risk. Medicinal product under the programs must be provided free of charge to the patient, only for ethical and human reasons. It must be the fulfillment of the requirements for the protection of personal data and medical secret. One of the important details that the program can begin only after the provider of medicinal product concludes an agreement with a healthcare institution or with individual entrepreneur. Moreover, such contract could be signed not just a provider of this medicine, but also it could be signed by its authorized representative in Ukraine. So the provider of medicinal products within the relevant program must ensure the compliance with the requirements for quality of medicinal products, in particular compliance with GMP and GDP. There are several requirements for doctors and healthcare facilities. So the first part will be for doctors. Doctors could be involved in the relevant program. They must have sufficient professional experience and trainings. And the second one, they should work in healthcare institutions that are involved in this implementation of relevant program. Moreover, we have several requirements for healthcare facilities. It should have an ethics committee. Also, this healthcare facility has a sufficient material and technical support, in particular to ensure and comply with the conditions for storage and medical products. And also, it should comply with the terms of relevant program. And this healthcare facility has entered in an agreement with the provider of medicinal products. Let's move to the last slide of my presentation. And as we can see, we have several factors regarding the patients here. One of the key elements is that patient can only voluntarily participate in the program. And to prove this, patient has to provide informed consent to participate in the program. And as I previously mentioned, we have several requirements for doctors and healthcare facilities, but I want to focus your attention that a doctor who has a status and registered as a private entrepreneur has the right also be involved in implementation of the program. But in this case, this doctor must have sufficient professional training and experience. This doctor must have written approval from ethics committee. Also, this doctor has sufficient material and technical support, and also have an agreement with the provider of medicinal products. Thank you for your attention. I'm sure that next speaker, my colleague Oksana Podmogilna, our business development manager, will provide the next information regarding the expanded access program. Oksana, welcome.
Thank you, Evgeny. Okay, so dear colleagues, taking the floor from Evgeny, I would like to continue the presentation and focus on the timing of the decision for the program authorization and underline that from the submission of all documents for the program approval until the receipt of the approval itself, it can take only up to 17 working days. Sponsor or its authorized representative shall submit a set of defined documents to the MOH, and MOH in 2 working days transfers all documents to the State Expert Center, who has only 5 working days for program and documents verification. Then the State's Expert Center issues its conclusion to the MOH. Received all, the MOH has 10 working days for expanded program approval or rejection with indication of such decision. It seems that this is the fastest way to start all activities in comparison with the scheme and timelines for approval of clinical trial. Gal, please, let's go to the next slide. Following the submission to the MOH, an ethics committee authorization must be obtained. A private physician, as a private entrepreneur, or a doctor who is involved in conducting of the program submits to the relevant ethics committee a letter of intention, a dedicated form also available on the MOH website, the information about the medicinal product that will be provided within the framework of the program, a description of the program itself, and the draft of the informed consent form. After documents are submitted, the ethics committee has 5 working days for approval or withdrawal, indicating the reason of their decision. Authorization required for each site. Authorization is required for each site where the program is going to be conducted. Gal, please, let's go to the next. Going to the next slide, we see the requirement for labeling of unregistered medicines that would be used in the program. Medicines shall be imported in primary or secondary packaging within an instruction if it's available. The additional labeling must be also put it in and include a mark showing not for sale, a mark for expanded access program only, and a mark which indicates the program number or code. All can be done in Ukrainian, English, or other official European Union language, except the program code. A program code must be written in Ukrainian. Just to note that additional labeling can be done after the importation of medicines to Ukraine. Thank you. That's all from my side. Gal, please.
Thank you very much, Evgeny. Thank you very much, Oksana. I think thus far we have seen quite an elaborate demonstration of the current Ukrainian market from a variety of points of view, the related data, the resilience of the market, the activities of the regulator, and I think on expanded access, it's also important to add that it also serves an opportunity to collect valuable data in compliance with a variety of regulatory bodies all across the globe, which can be complementary and very valuable for the final submission of clinical trial data en route to the market authorization. So in that, Ukraine also goes in line with current and up-to-date industry trends. I think to wrap up, one more aspect showing the resilience, Dimitro Zavada is going to join us and show and highlight some of the solutions that we've been developing over the course of the last few months. Dimitro, please.
Thanks, Oksana. Thanks, God. And colleagues, I fully agree with you that the availability of expanded access programs in Ukraine and the existence of such a law, such an important law, will help us raise the level of Ukraine on the world stage and, of course, ensure the availability of medicines in unfortunately difficult time for all of us. Hello everyone, most of you probably already know me or have seen me from our previous meetings, webinars. My name is Dmitro, I'm located in Ukraine, in Kyiv, and I hold the position of Key Account Manager at Oximio. So today we have our third webinar related to clinical trials in Ukraine, in my motherland, and of course we don't want to build illusions. Maybe we have faced with a lot of challenges, but you know what is no less important, that we have adopted all the processes properly according to the current circumstances. We keep the high level of quality of different and various procedures, and we all do not just sit idly by, but continue to improve, to develop the clinical trial environment. So within the next few slides, I want to share with you the information and solutions that are available in Ukraine, in Oximio, for a more comfortable process of conducting a clinical trial in Ukraine. So what is at the center of clinical trials? Now, of course, the patients. And the UA market offers a lot of opportunities to simplify the patient journey in a clinical trial. It can be expanded access program that my colleagues talked about earlier. It can be different taxi management, for example, taxi arrangement, travel arrangements, not only in Ukraine, but also outside of Ukraine. Booking of the hotels, buying of petrol coupons for patients or meal vouchers, so the patients are kept on within the study. I would also like to mention here the home healthcare services. In Ukraine, it is possible to involve a study nurse to perform some activities directly at the patient's home. And especially now when some patients cannot visit the sites for reasons that I guess clear for all of us. For example, in Oximio, we can take over the entire organization of this process and coordinate all the actions of the nurse, and as a result to decrease the workload, for example, of clinical study team. And the next important thing is, of course, export of biosamples. All of you heard that we faced with issues to deliver the samples in time from Ukraine due to lack of air connection. However, Ukrainian community found the way and adopted all steps for delivery of samples to central laboratories. And as Olga said, during the war period, Oximio delivered and exported more than 250 shipments to central laboratories in EU, UK, or USA. And currently, logistics consist of delivering samples by the car to nearby countries with Ukraine, such as Poland and Hungary, and then by, of course, air to the final destination. So actually, to summarize, all services continue to work in Ukraine, and I'm sure that you can always find a suitable solution for your clinical trials. Thanks, Gal. Next slide, please. This slide, colleagues, will give you an overview of services that have been implemented by the Oximio as a response to the current war in Ukraine. The first one is related to the reconciliation of the returned shipment at tablet, capsule, vial level. We understand that during the war in Ukraine, some of the clinical research associates left the country or cannot visit the sites and make a full count of the returned materials. Oximio's company understand the complexity of the situation and the overall importance of this process, and is ready to take on this responsibility and carry out this procedure in our both warehouses in Krushenka, central Ukraine, and in broader western Ukraine. We have created all the necessary conditions for the safe counting of returned materials. We purchased the medical fume hood, we purchased the protective suits and equipment, and of course conducted the relevant training for our employees. This process can now be carried out by country depot and facilitate the process of visiting sites by CRAs. Another service is storage of clinical trial documentation at our depots in central or western Ukraine. The war in Ukraine, as I said earlier, brought many challenges to the clinical trial industry in the country, and in particular affected the work of clinical sites. Parts of the sites are very close to the front line and are risk on a daily basis. Storage and availability of data is vital in clinical trials, as you know. This helps track history, analyze critical metrics, save investments, and speed up time to market. And here we have the logical question is how to protect the data already available and minimize the possibility of losing it. And Oximio is ready to offer its premises for storing documents. What few benefits that will it bring to you? Materials will be stored in temperature controlled conditions with humidity control. The territory of warehouse is guarded by a private security company. Our warehouses, as I said, are located in central and western Ukraine, so you have the opportunity to choose warehouses and reduce risks. And of course, materials may also be sent back to the site for monitoring visit or possible audit. And the last service in this set of services is printing of clinical trial documentation. We have organized the possibility of printing materials at the local level. It can be study newsletter, investigator folder printing, different booklets and binders. So we can print materials here in Ukraine, deliver them to clinical sites, and simplify the supply chain, for example, to Ukraine, avoiding imports and customs formalities. So I'm sure that each of you have found the services useful, and as you see, Oximio as a company is trying its best to mitigate the current challenges in the country. Gal, next slide, please. So this is an important development that the company has achieved in 2022. Oximio received a license to handle controlled drugs in Ukraine. With this license, we can import, store, distribute, purchase, or export the controlled drugs. It also ensures that care is delivered to people whose mental and physical health has been affected by the war, difficult circumstances in which they are living. Since the war started in Ukraine, a lot of people suffer from anxiety disorder caused by very stressful, frightening or distressing events, let's say. As well, many people were seriously injured. It's predictable that, unfortunately, the number of Ukrainians with post-traumatic disorder will continue to grow. And all these worrying issues demonstrate how important it is that we continue to optimize the delivery of care and create new opportunities for our patients in Ukraine. We as Oximio see Ukraine as the high potential market for startups with the use of controlled drugs. So colleagues, to sum it up, as you can see, the Ukrainian community is actively working to develop the market and create better conditions for clinical trials in Ukraine. And not only now, during the war, but also after our victory. Thank you.
Dmytro, thank you very much. And I would like to take this time to thank everybody who has shared their time for us today, both as presenters, Evgeny, Dmytro, Ludmila, Oksana, and Olga, and everybody who has also joined us as listeners. Thank you very much. I think we are almost out of time, and hence we're going to leave the Q&A for an offline discussion. We're going to take note of all the questions that you have shared and provide answers offline. And again, we would like to thank all our clients and all our partners for the ongoing support during this time. I think today's presentation also attests again, as my colleague have said, that the activities that are now ongoing in Ukraine are absolutely unprecedented and unbelievable in the way we're coping with the current crisis, and with an optimistic outlook into the future. We're sure that we're going to come out even stronger, and we're going to enable all those changes into a more robust clinical trial landscape in Ukraine. And for now, I wish you all the best and a very good rest of the day and evening, depending on the time zone where you are from. Thank you very much for joining. Goodbye.